Tuesday morning meeting of the BOCC. See, if you want to join me, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Commissioner Mortensen, you want to give us a recap of the minutes?
Good morning, everyone. I did the usual, reviewed the minutes of the activities last week, and I move to approve those minutes.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the minutes.
I suppose you didn't think I could talk that fast, huh?
Any questions, corrections? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I'll run down through consent agenda. Under agreements, contracts, bid awards, we have two items. One, professional service agreement with Atwell Group to provide development review services on an as-needed basis in a not to exceed amount of $50,000. This agreement runs through the end of this year, 12/31/24. This helps Public Works out when we had a person that used to do this took another job, so we've been kind of backfilling that with outside groups to help when needed. Interagency agreement with Cowlitz County Fire Districts number 6 and 3. They were awarded $12,000 in this rural schools and community federal grant funds. So as a combined project, so there needed to be an interagency agreement between the two. Correspondence, we have a retirement letter dated 8/13/24 to Lori Kelly. Congratulating over 35 years of service with the Sheriff's Office. The next three, B, C, and D, we're getting into budget season. So Dyking District number 15 sent in a 2025 preliminary budget estimate. Drainage Improvement District number 1 sent in a 2025 budget estimate. And Consolidated Dyking Improvement District number 3 sent in their 2025 preliminary budget estimate. Letter dated 8/13/24 to Leslie Clark, appointing her to the rodeo board, 4-year term that expires end of October of 2028. Letter dated 8/13/24 to Savannah Clement, appointing her to the fair board, also a 4-year term, expires October 31st, 2028. And a letter dated 8/13/2024 to Pam Fierst. Hopefully I said that right. Appointing her to the fair board. It's a 4-year term that expires the end of October. That should be 28. Your agenda says 24, but it actually should be 28. Vouchers, total vouchers in the amount of $3,162,599.08. That's the consent agenda. Any questions, comments on it?
The one thing I wanted to point out that the information we received from the Dyking Improvement Districts is merely informative.
Right.
We do not pass judgment on those budgets. So they have their own elected directors. So, but state law says they've got to report them to the county. So we'll be getting a number of these for junior taxing districts during the rest of the budget season.
Yeah.
So
Good
the
point.
purpose for that,
I think just public notice.
just public notice.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. On the Atwell Group, I'm looking at Sean Rowe. Maybe he can tell us a little bit. Reluctantly, apparently.
think this is probably more Susan's arena, but you know a little bit about it.
Savannah, too.
Sean Rowe, Public Works. This would be more in Susan's realm. I believe Savannah is also online if she can provide more information on this one.
I should try that technique next time.
Well, I think what we heard yesterday from Savannah is that, as the chairman mentioned, we had a resignation from the engineering department. We have a very difficult time attracting engineers. This is the height of the construction season, and we don't want to use the lack of staff as a reason to delay approval of various requests. So we hire this firm to fill in the gap.
Yeah, I think I was trying to tie that into a greater picture that would tie into our finance director who sent a cautionary note out. And what we have here is the person who left us was a spectacular employee, and he covered a lot of ground. And in this one particular case that he handled, instead of hiring somebody new today, we're going to go through with a contract. And that may be some of the thinking other departments need to do for the specialization. Okay.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented today.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Questions, comments? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
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 So one of the bits of information that we received is some bad news regarding the sales tax. Typically, sales tax increases every year as we have inflation. It reflects inflation. But we have been tracking this year the loss of revenue for sales tax compared to last year. And it turns out that we had been very used to getting sales taxes from car sales from both Columbia Ford and Bud Clary, who had been successful at negotiating a state contract. So the state purchases made for those vehicles were run through Cowlitz County. And so not only the cities of Longview gained a bunch of money, but so did Cowlitz County, our share of the sales tax. Well, apparently, as you know, Columbia Ford no longer exists. It was bought out by Bud Clary, and they have dealers in Yakima County, and they're able to have a lower sales tax in Yakima County than here. So they've transferred their sales there. We estimate a loss of about $1 million. And so it's 0.1% increases on a whole bunch of different things that finally nickel and dimed them out of doing business in Cowlitz County. So you may hear similar concerns coming from the city of Longview because it's going to be even more devastating for them. So $1 million is nothing to behave in an ostrich-like manner. I mean, we have to take steps to make sure that we are prepared for next year for the revenues to not go in. We didn't budget for that. We didn't anticipate that, but
There's a key lesson in there. Even this morning, I saw that the majority of people leaving for Florida, I have to be careful the numbers. Anyhow, it's the high income earners, and we know what's happened in Washington State with some key people, Jeff Bezos and so forth as a prime example. So the old thing about all you got to do to raise more funds is increase the taxes. It doesn't really work too well.
Okay, we have one motion item. Make you run back up there.
Sean Riley, Public Works again. This morning before you, we have an agreement with Peak Environmental for some sampling well relocation and abandonment at the Tenant Way landfill for a cost of $76,006.42.
And you might want to share why we're switching
Yeah.
wells around.
100%. So at Tenant Way landfill, we are looking at some acquisition projects on the site itself. So we are moving, we are abandoning 5 wells that are on the property that's up for acquisition and moving those properties onto the county that'll be retained properties. We're looking at 2 monitoring wells, 1 gas probe well, and then 1 water level well as well.
And these wells are currently located on a strip of land that is, we've negotiated with the Port of Longview for their expansion of the railroad service.
That's correct.
So they're multiplying the number of rail lines that are going into the property and had to acquire a portion of the landfill. It's actually not landfill itself, but the service area where these monitoring wells are located. So.
Yeah, so if you're driving down Tenant Way there and you see where all the buildings are at, that would be the property for acquisition there, that strip.
Now that has been, the purchase of land, that land has been in discussion forever, it seems like. Did we actually close a deal on that?
We have not closed a deal on that, but we're fairly close on that.
I think this was one of the sticking points, is figuring this all out.
Yeah, these relocations would be a requirement before we are able
Yeah,
to
'cause
release
that
that land.
took environmental review and all kinds of stuff. yeah.
Yep, a lot of work with ecology and some consultants on that.
The Department of Ecology added a certain element of time to that whole review process, and
They did,
delayed.
yes.
So how will the county access that, those, the landfill now?
Sure. On that acquisition of land, we'll maintain an easement for access into the property. So we'll still be crossing a similar entrance point, but it'll be over the land that we would be selling.
We still go over the train tracks at the same place?
Yes, sir.
And they're adding how many new tracks there? At least 2, isn't it?
I want to say they're going up to 6 in some places, but I couldn't tell you for sure.
Oh. 6 was.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the agreement with Peak Environmental LLCC for well abandonment and relocation at the Tenant Way landfill.
okay, we have a motion to approve. Any questions, comments on that?
It is surprising that the Tenant Way landfill is celebrating its 10th anniversary of being closed. It's been 10 years already, and just pretty amazing.
Is-
Bush, okay. When you're talking about the Department of Ecology, is that WIRA that you have to negotiate with?
I don't believe so. The Department of Ecology reviewed our plans and our intents there and gave their approval process. I don't believe there's any interaction with that sub-department.
Okay, because that would involve trading off one probably agreement for another for putting in different wellheads. That's what we're talking about. It's relocating wellheads, right?
Yes, these are environmental sampling wells. So they're holes drilled into the ground so we can test groundwater, if there's any gas migration, making sure that the quality is paramount and nothing's leaving the landfill site itself.
Okay, so it's a whole different critter than with the Department of Ecology. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? We have a motion on the floor.
Right?
Okay. Seeing no other questions, we'll call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Sean. Sean, oh, sorry to do this to you. Can we talked a little bit yesterday because we had an incident at our headquarters landfill and what we're kind of doing about that, just for public knowledge, if that's okay.
Yeah, as many of you may have heard or seen on some of the local news stations, we did have a small landfill fire on Thursday evening, about 6 PM. The local fire departments responded as well as some employees, and that was put out. We do have concerns at the landfill regarding some of our lithium batteries and road flare items. It is, it is a concern across the nation for those kind of items. We are looking into getting some thermal cameras out there so we can see into the fill that may have some hot spots or things like that. And that may have an ability to call out or notify us ahead of time. So it's not something after a fire's started, but we can get to it ahead of the fire starting.
What's the telltale signs that the fire was caused by a lithium battery?
The fire was initiated in the active operating area where we're putting waste into the fill itself. And when you crush a battery open, it usually kicks off immediately, but sometimes it can smolder and then start after the fact. So you
So
crack
you're talking
open.
about crushing, that's the compacting down.
Correct, yeah. And so once you crush that seal on the battery, it'll ignite immediately. Sometimes it'll smolder and then burn open. So with it starting about that 6 o'clock time period, it was just after the employees had left for the day.
We're talking about the lithium ion batteries.
Yes, sir.
How should the public treat their wasted?
So yeah, lithium ion batteries are a hazardous and dangerous waste. They should be recycled through the batteries at waste control. In 2023, Washington State did pass its battery stewardship laws. We hope to see those in place by 2027. It'll be a more robust recycling program at that point in time and have more options for those.
It's, we're not, the little lithium ion batteries, you would need quite a number of them in order to generate enough heat, I would think, to ignite something. So this was a pile of batteries that got thrown together, and I'm thinking about when people dump stuff, typically you have a spot inspection, something, kind of a certification that this doesn't have hazardous waste.
So, one of the items that most people may toss away, not know it's a dangerous or hazardous waste, would be a vape pen. They usually have a lithium ion battery within those. And even that crushing, even it's a, small handheld size, but that's enough to start a pretty significant fire by itself.
And how should we treat the normal AA, AAA, and 9-volt batteries that are the old style?
I would always recommend recycling them. They usually have another life cycle or availability to be recycled in something new at that point, yeah.
So we should not be throwing them into the garbage.
I would always recommend recycling, sir.
I beg your pardon?
I would always recommend recycling them.
Right. Okay, thank you.
But it's virtually impossible to inspect all the loads that come in and get dumped. I mean, there's no way that we can uncover those tiny ones.
Mhm. And a lot of times they're built into a toy or something like that, and they're not easily removable, and people may not know that they're even in there, not think about that.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it, Sean. I just want people to be aware that we know about it and then you are looking at ways to kind of monitor it a little better. Yeah,
Thank you.
Thanks.
I think in the pre-meeting, the chairman said, we got to give that guy Sean a bad time.
No, I remember his reputation at the gun range. I'm not giving Sean a bad time. Okay, before we head into public comment, this Wednesday at 2:30, we have Habitat for Humanity and Veterans Advisory Board. If you have interest in those two, we'll be chatting with those folks on Wednesday, starting at 2:30. Next Tuesday, the 20th, starting at 10, and there'll be various times during the day, we'll complete some more Board of Health member interviews. We did 3 yesterday. I think we have 16 total. 16 total, so we'll continue along with that. Then on next Wednesday, the 21st, we'll have the Community Mediation Center. And we'll go over a presentation of the Youth Residential Treatment Facility, the one I've been working with IETA on, the juvenile facility, restructuring some of that. So that will be on the 21st at 2:30. Okay. With that, oh, I'm sorry. Carolyn wanted 5 minutes. We're starting the clock.
The pressure. Okay, so I am in that position again where I am soliciting interested parties to participate in a con committee for the City of Kelso's resolution on the November 5th general election ballot. So essentially it is an increase from a 0.1% sales tax to a 0.3% sales tax on their transportation benefit district. So anybody interested in serving in a con committee, I would appreciate them stopping by elections.
You have a lot of time
So that's a
left over.
transportation benefit district for a city, which is road improvements, as opposed to a public transit benefit district, which is River City Transit. So this is Kelso Roads.
It is, and I believe taxpayers are currently paying 0.1%. This would be an increase on the existing tax.
Yeah.
And the city of Longview has something similar on the ballot for,
City of Longview has a police services resolution, and we did get volunteers to serve on that con committee. I was seeking con participants for that one as well, but we did receive some. So now I'm just left with Kelso. Longview's is a little bit different. It's to fund specifically police services.
but it's another 0.1% tax increase. Yeah.
Correct.
So
What's the time frame, Carolyn? I mean, obviously, as soon as
As
the
soon as
better, right?
possible. Yeah, we already extended the deadline. The deadline was last Tuesday, but because it's election day, it was past your last week's meeting. So immediately, we issue a press release, we put it on the website, but I wasn't able to get into a public meeting until today. So the deadline is actually set at today, but we'll give a little bit of grace for anybody that wants to step up and participate.
So is there a residential requirement for somebody to make a comment on a City of Kelso resolution?
Not yet.
Some say, for example, an active anti-tax citizen that we know lives really close to Kelso city limits could volunteer.
Yes, until January 1 of 2025. A new law takes effect January 1.
So his last chance to talk about theft.
Thank you. I appreciate the
Okay,
opportunity.
thanks, Carolyn.
I think she wants to talk to you, Tim.
Tell us, if it's all right, where the cities get their road fund money? Is it only by an additional sales tax?
No, the sales tax increase is actually a relatively new phenomenon. For cities, it comes out of their general property tax, general fund, actually. So
Yeah.
they have an allocation of so much of, I think it's $1.50 on property taxes for cities. And out of that, they have to pay all the different government services, library, fire, parks.
Does that 150 scale up with inflation? So it's 150 last year, it's 160 this year.
It gets adjusted because of the 1% growth rate. So that if the value of the property grows up, they'll adjust the millage down. So there's a little change. And again, if there's a special levy, schools get that. Schools get a certain amount of property tax allocation, but they go to the voters for excess levies. And again, Those levies are for a dollar amount, so if the property value goes up, then that millage rate is
Right.
adjusted.
And this
So,
increase in the sales tax applies to the city of Longview, say, not to somebody out of
correct.
Kelso or Woodland.
correct. So the county gets a share of what is collected inside the cities. The legislature years ago recognized that most stores are inside city limits, not all, but most of them. And so there was a big negotiation, and counties get to collect 15% of what is raised inside the cities from sales tax. So because, we don't have that much in the way of retail sales. So that was negotiated years and years and years ago. Yeah, that's that relates to the fact that I was talking about is as we increase the number of 0.1% added to the sales tax, there's a discouragement for businesses who can move to get out from underneath those taxes.
Yeah.
So.
Go ahead, Carolyn.
I was also going to add that car tabs have an additional funding mechanisms. The cities have the option of implementing additional taxes. I don't know exactly who has implemented which rates, but I know that City of Longview went up to $40. So if you reside in City of Longview, you'll pay an additional $40 on your car tabs.
Yeah, that's a good point. City of Longview used car tabs to do same type of thing that I know Kelso wants to do, improve the roads.
Yep.
Go ahead, Tim.
Well, it's funny. I was just thinking, how many of these little taxes are there? These 0.1% all the time. It's like you said, they kind of tax Bud Clary out of town. I had some other question, but now everybody's talking. I forgot what it was. I know.
So we have 0.3%. The county has a 0.3% sales tax that is limited to law and justice functions. And so we have prosecutors and court clerks and sheriff's deputies and maybe public defenders. They get a portion of those funds. It's all separately recorded and kept track of, separately budgeted. So if you live within the public transit benefit district, which is the city of Longview and Kelso and some of the precincts right next to the cities where the bus routes run, there's another 0.3% sales tax. Now, the transit tax was approved by voters. I believe the law and justice tax was also approved by voters. We have a 0.1% tax that was approved by voters to support the 911 communications center. And then the cities also have their optional sales tax that I'm trying to, I think that is the list for most of us in Cowlitz County. Oh, the mental health tax that we just let expired, that could be added if the voters choose to do that as well. So
In keeping with kind of the direction you were asking, way back when income tax was proposed, the stellar move by some manipulator was to do withholding. Because can you imagine if at the end of the year you got your tax bill that said you owe $500? This is going back quite a ways. The people just would not tolerate that. But on the other hand, maybe they could tolerate losing $50 a month, let's say. So the whole idea is we can manipulate things as long as we parcel them in the right way. And that's the way politics seems to do a lot of things. We can pass things if we say it's for this special interest group, because after all, they've got special needs, and it just goes on down the line. And you know the bottom line, move to Yakima or Florida.
Yeah, well, it's funny you mentioned that because a couple of friends of mine just moved to Florida. Family took everybody out of the community, you know, they were good producers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you still have to be able to endure August in Florida.
It's true, and alligators and whatnot, but still,
Yeah.
you know, they're gone right to where you said too. My question was, how does this a tax appear? Now, let's just use this mental health tax as an example of what we let expire, right? So how does that show up to like the retailer who's collecting the tax? Do they get like an itemized list of all the things that they're taxed on, or does the overall percentage just go, you know, down that little bit? How do they know they're paying it
Well, I know when we let it go.
or collecting it, I
they-
should say?
They had to adjust, they had to make some adjustments, so I know they're aware of it. What,
So when a government entity, either the voters or the legislative agency passes a sales tax increase, it goes to the state Department of Revenue. They get noticed, and then they send the message to all the retailers that here's the new sales tax you have to start charging as of so on. So the only way you know there's a change is if you pay attention to your sales receipts and they list the percentage, but it's aggregate. It's just one percentage, you know.
Yeah.
You don't know how it's broken down like that. And that really, you know, there's no system for notifying individual taxpayers about the breakdown unless you attend these kinds of meetings and we talk about it.
Right.
If you want the
Yeah.
breakdown, isn't it on MRSC? You can get a lot of that data.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, that's an agency, a research agency that is available for
What were
local
those
governments.
initials again?
MRSC, it sounds like our finance director would be a great lead there.
Oh. Okay, all right, thanks.
Back in the olden days, when you got to deduct sales tax from your income, federal income tax, you had to be aware, you had to be able to figure out what your local government sales tax was, because it all amounts to a different chart on how you add that to you calculate that through your taxable income. So, and it was complicated. So most people probably didn't get it right because we don't share that often enough.
Good morning, guys. You may or may not know the answer to this question, but as it was brought up about Longview's increasing their tax for police, how far behind are we on our court dockets right now? You guys know? Are we caught up from COVID?
I don't know that we're caught up. When we hear reports, we know that they've made progress. I don't know if they're caught up those.
No.
The last thing I remember is the answer was yes, they were caught up, but
Okay.
caught up to what level is
Yeah,
there's still always an ongoing backlog.
but
Okay.
it
So
has
there's-
been improved.
Okay.
So there still is a lag time for non-criminal cases. The Constitution requires speedy trials. And so criminal cases go to the head of the line. But there's an awful lot of litigation that is non-criminal, although it involves families, you know, family law, divorces, they drag on for a long time. Civil suits drag on for a long time.
Okay.
So in that, we, you know, we get information that the state has statistics that say we should probably have a whole nother superior court. But their interest is in making sure we have plenty of judges, so.
Okay. I just, when you guys mentioned that, the thought occurred to me, if we're going to be adding police in Longview, adding more cases to that docket, if we were far behind, if that's been discussed, if it was going to be mitigated in any way.
Well, that's the interesting thing. When you add police or deputies, if you generate more felony accusations, the county is the one that pays for the felony convictions. Misdemeanors, gross misdemeanors, the cities pay for the adjudication of that case. So that was another little cost driver we don't have control over. As the cities increase the number of police, it adds to the expenses of the county.
Yeah, that's why I was asking if it had been discussed
Yeah.
prior to it getting.
So
on the
another
ballot.
measure that we use is the enrollment in drug court. They've had to revamp their system because possession is no, was kind of demoted.
Yeah.
And they were pretty low in numbers in the midst of COVID. And they're built back up, but I still don't think they're back up to where they were before COVID. They're still having to come up with additional charges.
What I would tell you probably with fairly good certainty that the costs in that arena are going to rise. There's some legislation when it takes effect on number of cases that people can handle and changing a lot of that, which is going to mean more people. And so there's going to be more pressure on those, because those costs will rise and how
Yeah.
we deal with it.
And I think it's not that violent crimes are up, but I think it's property crimes that are one of the biggest culprits that we're dealing with right now, which is going to add to that cost that you're talking about.
Yeah.
So,
So it's going to be an area that we're going to deal with for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Well, they're not going to deal with it.
We'll let you know how you're doing.
I'm sure you will. Mr. Weber has his hand raised. He does? No.
Again?
Anything else? Okay, see nothing else. We will adjourn. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.